Welcome. I'm so glad that you can join me here today. 225, the 225th day, excerpts from 580, 81, 82. So it's 1, 2, 3 pages. And won't you join me here today? These excerpts are taken right out of the novel, TheSovereignLight, named after my ministry, a course in metaphysical spirituality. And my name is Reverend Maria Arvanitides. How do you do? So, today, once again, we revisit what does it mean to trust and surrender? What in actual fact are we surrendering to? What are we trusting? Is it an illusion? Is it a fantasy? And if so, how does it make us feel? Do we feel connected or disconnected? So leverage the indices of this frequency and see how well you can come close from it and magnetize how magnetic is this reality that can actually form into solid, touch it, feel it, taste it as a symptom of our circumstances. And what is it that we have to work through in order to flip it into the way that we prefer rather than the contrast for its lesson? So today, release, let go, and surrender. So what kind of faith are we trusting in? And is it blind? Or do we have that insight, that strength to visualize and make it real, to penetrate and inseminate our holographic field with it, and then have the capacity to feel it and create it by drawing it in through magnetic threads and magnetism, that the emotions. And so with trust to all that is love, be open and receptive and project this original source of exploration to deliver from the heart. So we are, even if it means, doing it on the internet and meeting others in this way, and how much they would be willing to open up without it being, in a sense, predatorial or parasitical and toxic and, in it for the money. That is the falseness of it all, it not being real, and in fear and all these other threats and bullying and all these other lower density things that happen because we allow it without boundaries to explore ourselves in that reflection. And so what is it are we expecting? What is it that we are expecting? What is it that we're rejecting? What is it that we're resisting? Could it be things that we've never experienced before, that we don't know how to value or appreciate? And when it happens, we believe it like blind faith from the external, and we believe in it, and we give it our power and empower it, but then we leave ourselves open to be in victimhood. So how is it that we can open up and trust in this way to engage with others and form relationships without the ego mind and ego-driven world that might pull us right back down into the 3D Maya matrix of the Kali Yuga and so on and so forth. How is it that we can live from the higher heart without others expecting us to prove for anything to them in a way of acceptance? So how much money we might have in order to be able to buy them and enslave them with and keep them entertained or against their will or interest by tricking them, and then hidden, oh, it's free, here's the sample, but then here's the other catch. You got to pay into it, and if you don't, it makes you feel guilty because now you're in, and yet you don't want to pay to continue. And so these things, there's many hooks out there, and more so the illusion, the falseness of things that might appear to be real. So how is it that we can make it real? How is it that we can feel the love from the external to reflect back to us and connect with us in a magnetic way, that we allow it in without rejection, without misinterpreting or misunderstanding or any language barriers for that matter, to try and make sense to how it is we're feeling and then thinking about them. And if they feel the same, but when you go to interpret it, it doesn't match in the way of thinking and how their filters might be and how their perspective might be that they see through to perceive, or their experiences, they might still be very hurt, very closed, very reserved, and showing a lot of strength and no weaknesses to open up into what is real and authentic about them, to get to know them, rather than others that were bought into reviews and all these other things, that testimonials and what have you, and associations and things that make that person confident enough to be that identity that the ego-driven world prefers. Now that's not real. Now that's not something I would recommend trusting and surrendering your integrity to. Rather, it was been taught and ingrained from the old world, like Napoleon Hill, Andrew Carnegie, and all these other people that followed along afterwards, that if it doesn't cost anything, then it's not worth your time, or to pay any visit, or to participate or associate, because there's no value in it when it has no asking of a purchase price, when it has no devalued principle of price that we have to pay in order to appreciate its worth, for example, this lesson. And so this here video, that unless other people buy into it, no one will really be open to waking up to it until it gets discovered in a way of the money to make it happen. So really, this is a backwards way of living that creates a lot of hierarchy. It creates, right now, what we are undergoing, this dismantling of it, to be able to kind of see little glimpses of the other way of doing it and making it real. Actually, everything coming to you, whatever it is you want, to actually come into your world magnetically as you penetrate it with your thoughts and your visions, with the I am presence, the Aries, and then the Capricorn, to make it magnetic and make it happen. Ida and Pingala, as they say. And yes, that black aspect coming up, the source, and the magnetism that brings it all together. And so here we are with, it's not just white light, but it's also dark light, the two of them together, making this reality, the invisible, the unseen, that we can feel and sense and make it real. And so how we do this is electromagnetically, and when we make it happen, we're not buying the symptom, the already made, whatever was the past, and it's in solid form creation already that somebody had created, and now we're fighting for this limitation of that one creation in that image of that one imagination. So now it is in form, and we're paying either for the service, either for the teachings, either for the objects, when in fact the first thing that will come to us with ease is these objects and the services, the knowledge, the wisdom, and the people, the subjects. But those are the limitations from the resistances that we might feel towards each other that will make it stagnant, or would make it a repulsion, or it would make it slow down, or depending on the frequency we're vibrating on. And so there's a lot to it. And if we just try not to explain it and how it works and just go with it and believe in it and have faith, that's not blind faith. That's being the creator of our world. And so this is how we manifest things. This is how we create things. And the illusion, the falsehood of it is, needing to have money in order to reach out for help from others, needing to have money in order to have the companionship and friendship, needing to have money to buy all these things in a backwards way, rather than not even needing the money to get along with each other, and stop with this disconnect already. So I'm hoping that eventually we'll get to this level where money is meaningless, even the cryptocurrency, And before this, there was a thing called bartering, but we moved beyond that as well. So this is what I am kind of revealing and explaining, that maybe you all can comprehend on your own, in your own way, that there is this possibility called faith, and it doesn't have to be blind and blindly guided by external forces, that you can actually do it yourselves from within. So when we get the planetary systems of retrogrades, this is how you can feel what actually astrologically and planetary, that is all within us in a galactic and every kind of way, in a microcosmic way, that we can decode through our genes, that when we get to those levels of ascension and perhaps resurrection and resurrect, is that we feel it in the retrogrades, in the way that others might feel it when the actual planets are moving. And the same way, the people who are now influenced, like me, depending on the planets, we have a lot to learn when they're moving and they're in cardinal aspects. But then when they're in retrograde, we might feel the negative aspects. That's because it's in the reverse. And my point here in an example, these parables, what I'm giving an example to kind of compare, or not so much compare, but to comprehend the expansion of it all, that's how abundance also works. And this is how we also work with nature, and how nature also responds to our ways. If we have wicked ways, then we get extreme upsets and off balances with everything around us. And the earth does feel us. And so we don't have to be enslaved by other planets and other energies from the galactic centers and things like that, because it's all within us and it's all within reach for all the extra terrestrial beings, sentient beings, all of yous. We can channel, we can do all these things, but at the same time, we have to know ourselves so that others don't, the external illusion is not the one defining us and putting a price tag and a value or a devalue on our beingness. And so with that said, let's continue. Release, let go. This is going to be a lengthy one. And surrender with trust to all that is love. Be open and receptive, and project this original source of exploration to deliver from the heart. So just take a few deep breaths in. And after the said sermon that I went into on how we can better grasp this thing called surrender and trust, let's feel it through our breathing. You can belly breathe, you can breathe from the heart, you can, wherever you visualize your intention and feel the connection the most, just deeply breathe. Take a few deep breaths in and connect it and bring it up to your heart space center. And just let it autonomically happen, and focus on just this simple thing with your back straight. No matter where you are, find a space, a place where you can trust and open up and surrender completely to allowing yourself into a gamma headspace of connection. And with a few deep breaths in, you can opt to have your eyes closed or open, and just contemplate on this from the three primary colors to all the colors, and from previous, they came into of separation that could cancel out each other. And now they merge into the one well. These reminders are the secondary colors, and then the other variations to this rainbow to combine as well. Come out of the repulsion and attraction and into the formless matter from these zones. They are entirely unified, as is this sovereign light being. Automatically, this memory is held in deeply, deeper than the others. From the wholesomeness emerges a crystalline presence and fluid white, incorruptible light of existence. And today's affirmation activation for the day, to get you through a perspective that you might feel and open up to this reality, to work through whatever might come up and arise throughout the day, that rises up and reflects into a symptom of your circumstances and engagement with others, to see it through this filter. As we say it out loud, I want you to feel it and hear you say it, so it might have impact and the magic to it. This is how we learn to become magicians. So let's get ready. This is a lengthy one. Perplexed about how to be the mirror, my mission becomes all about learning boundaries. And as I fall in love with shadow, wishing for the oneness, it can hurt so much to trust again. Perplexed about how to be the mirror, my mission becomes all about learning boundaries. And as I fall in love with shadow, wishing for the oneness, it can hurt so much to trust again. Perplexed about how to be the mirror, my mission becomes all about learning boundaries. And as I fall in love with shadow, wishing for the oneness, it can hurt so much to trust again. And from the shadow, the shadows of its carbon copy, the self can learn to love its childlike innocence. And instead of pushing it away, the realm of innocence through trust, it will regain. And rather, the outside circumstance, or that is engaging as a subject or a person or people, things that have their own will, might instead push you away instead of you pushing them away. So it's all good, because that resistance that you might be having, even if you don't act on it, if it's strong enough, it will connect to the mirror, and the mirror will then push you away and reject you, and perhaps even block you at that. And then it goes on again, the dynamics of what we resist persists, and we go into that kind of push-pull relationships. And the betrayal that once had mirrored what the self cannot become would not accept the authenticity that the self alone could offer to exist within it. Thus, physically, it could never become trapped within something that always repelled for its existence out. So, true love does not entrap you. If it's true, it will continue on existing and growing and expanding and building. If it's not, then it will get pushed away or push you away, or or you will feel the resistance from within, or whatever conflicts or circumstances of its symptoms that might arise to kind of pull you down so that it can separate you from that which you were meant to bond with and become one with. So either it be the circumstances or the actual subjects that you're wishing to engage with the mirror. So there's many variations to this. So perplexed about how to be the mirror, my mission becomes all about learning boundaries. And as I fall in love with shadow, wishing for the oneness, it can hurt so much to trust again. So rather than ascending and expecting to resurrect and fly away, we must work through all of these. And this is why dissension is also important. The loop. There's a movie out there now, just like a loop, something that happens again, and it's a repeat until we get it right and we learn. And so that is the only way we can ascend. So until then, we can do it ourselves and go in and regress, or be triggered by others, or get into something where it does. And this is what we're here to learn from the extreme rejection that the self had no choice but to exist from such human existence. Yet the fear from such an outcasting rendered it disabled and dysfunctional to be allowed such entry into coexist as a dependent on its system, stuck in certain levels of existence because of egoic deficiencies where the light needed to be. Right now we're going into a period of the fall where everything, nature and us corresponding with nature, become more withdrawn and reclusive. So whatever relationships that might have appeared to have happened, let's say in August, early September, now must come to part and withdraw from one another. And it might be to the extreme of complete severed relationships. And so if they started like just as easily as they started, they can end and never to appear again. But they might, who knows, come spring again. And so this is how the seasons works with us as well. And on the physical, and on the spiritual, and emotional, and ethereal. So the only thing that could ever harm it, this self, or destroy it, was its very own mind that it had feared. It was, however, the way that it could be led back onto the right path that it did not take before. And it's okay to make mistakes because we learn from them. So they're not really mistakes. They're just different variations of this loop. So that we might have missed something before, and now we're seeing it differently until we reach that level where we can move on and ascend from it and resurrect into another reality and transcend. And so, in search for clues of its happiness, that it could be led back onto the right path that it did not take before, can the self become completely lost enough and void of all its memory to trust again. Even like we forget who we are sometimes. We forget our everything. And, some of us might have chosen authority and to be an authority figure and that as being more real than to have money and be wealthy financially. Because some of us valued that over money. And now it could be like it's reversible. I mean, it could be one way or the other. Same way as how we go about doing things. Is money the importance? Is authority the importance? And what drives money and what drives authority? And what is more valuable? And all these things. That's a 3D level concept way of looking at everything, through the egoic mind and the egoic existence of little me Ethel or what have you, to define ourselves with masks. Those are just, just slivers, roles that we play as actors. They're not really, this is where we become trapped. When we think we're finite in this way. of the divine expression of the infinite that we allow to move us and animate and reanimate us. So we go out thinking we're helping people, asking them that we can only help them if they have something to give us that they're already in need of and can't afford the help. So how is it that we're helping others? And how is it that we can help others by rejecting them? So, and this is how our system is working. And this is where the deficiencies, everybody's here to contribute. And yet we allow who can engage and disengage and who's worthy of this contribution and who is not, and all these other things. This isn't the way. This is what creates illnesses in our society. And our society is very sick right now at the moment. Our whole world is suffering. Our humanity will no longer even exist as we know it. So the memory is the experience that holds the wisdom within it. And this is why the self had to learn to forgive and release all of its many grievances. To completely surrender into trust is the first step into eternity. And to be fully present in the moment is the other. So what I've noticed it in some languages, now so far I've experienced the German language, and whether it be through Google or engagement with others, that when they go to communicate and say something, it's in the past tense. And they don't, some languages are limited to the words that they can use to express themselves with. So we're very fortunate, this English language, that we have so many words, so many variations to use for our self-expression. And it doesn't limit or oppress us into wherever we go to say that we're saying it in the past tense rather than in the here now moment or in the future tense. We're saying it like right here, right now. And when we go to say it, this is how it's interpreted. But some other languages aren't so very forgiving, and they're very limited and fixed in the past. And so that was like baffling to me, of learning this German that I kind of learned a little bit in my experience. Or maybe it might just be Google translating in that way. And so to be current and in motion is to thrive. Anything other, we're just struggling in survival. And seek not the currency to corrupt the self into a codependent sustenance that shrinks its heart. So just breathe that in for a moment. Can you breathe? Something that shrinks cannot expand to accept the breathing, the deep breathing, the breathing that brings on connection. And so the self does not have to be employed to survive a life that will promote lack and limitation for its world. The bridge must be of the self-importance to close this gap, but first it must ascend from within the gap itself by closing the polarities and learning the lesson. It is the inner alchemical pathway for spiritual illumination. And 582. Perplexed about how to be the mirror, my mission becomes all about learning boundaries. And as I fall in love with shadow, wishing for the oneness, it can hurt so much to trust again. Boundaries are formed through expectations and from the previous experiences that formed us, that created these formations like the water streaming down and forming whatever the ground, the earth, and reshaping it through its flow. So, as I was mentioned before, the closed off self is not illuminated, and the perspective must be the change that must be made so that the shadow can integrate into the oneness. Allow the light to illuminate within the being of the self. It is done through alignment of its rainbow-colored chakra fields. As the final words will capture to recapitulate, and for the theme of importance, this thing that we've been working on, to trust fully in thyself through surrender. And this means no resistance, so that these carbon copy distortions, reflecting back like mirrors, can fall like dominoes by the wayside. And this is what it means for opposites to attract. In the old world, and right now, what we're dealing with, these polarities that create the separation, that create the gap. And when we bring the opposites together, like saying, oh, my better half. And this is how it worked. We brought the two halves together into becoming whole. But when we do the work and integrate this wholeness from within and become complete and wholesome, holy, whole, so this then becomes our attraction to others, that they are in likeness of us. So we're attracting like and like, not opposites anymore. And this is the way of the new world earth. I don't know what they're trying to do now. They're trying to do it in a synthetic, inverted way, new world order. But in action, and the illuminated, Illuminati, and the third eye, this is all inverted. This is all the illusions, the mirrors reflecting back to us and trying to govern and control us from separation and lack. But when we figure this out and learn from these illusions, from these mirrors, that this is who we are, then we can become empowered by it and become complete. In the sense, when we go looking out for a companion, for a friend, a lover, a partner, someone to have sex with, okay? We're looking for likeness, someone in our own likeness. I don't mean in a gender. I mean, it could be even in a gender, because when you think about it, it's no longer about procreating that will be bringing us together. It's co-creating, okay? And yes, partnerships, businesses, anything you can think of. But it's not done in that kind of currency, not even in the crypto kind of currency that they're looking to form right now. It's done in the reverse way that I've been trying to explain from the very beginning of this lesson. And so, the purpose here is to effortlessly feel within that alone, as all one, moment is atonement taking place. Only the carbon copy of itself was this lonely, sad existence to live out as an ego-driven human form. I'm still going through my lessons. I mean, it's just because I've been celibate or single for going on my 10-year, next year, I think March or February, yes. Does not mean that I have worked out all my relationship issues and intimate issues and, what I'm looking for in a partner and, what comes my way, what the universe actually brings me. And just to most recently might be even considered an opposite of me, being how they were, their interpretation of what money is to them, and my resistances to the way they are doing it in the way and how I've been working my life. And so it kind of clashed, but it also in the same way, we could be very astrological compatible and the perfect fit for each other as soulmates. And yet, these resistances, this is what relationships are all about, in working through all of this. And the more we have of each other, the more in numbers, also it's been known that it brings strength in numbers. But if you don't have that, you can also move the world, move mountains just by you alone. You can actually, just by thoughts, okay? That must be the Aries cardinal in me. But for instance, I get upset, I'm driving, I'm like, you can take your pink BMWs and shove them up your yin yang, right? And what happened was on my way, I went down the valley, and all of a sudden there's a pink Honda in front of me, like a custom-made pink Honda in front of me. I'm driving a Honda. And in back of me is a white BMW. So it's kind of hard now that I know before I didn't even, BMWs, I didn't even like them. And now every time I see a BMW, I think of her. Kind of strange things like that. And no, I'm getting to this aspect here that we can, through our thoughts, manifest things. But it's up to us magnetically how we can keep them and how they can keep us in this world together that we create. You see? And work through our differences or whatever this might be, through our heart space center, loving on each other. Not through this here or try to control each other through separation and all these other things. That we've been doing it all backwards, all inverted. And we'll always be struggling to try and get it exactly like the mirrors are presenting themselves. This is how it's done, because it's not. That's the way of the dead, the promoting death in the people who are. That's just death. That's just something that's like ghost, like how we get ghosted. But it's promoting death, and death doesn't have to exist either. And so, depending on our interpretation and how we believe it to be, the physical will always fall and something else will take its place. But the spirit and the soul that gives the spirit meaning, and the spirit that learns and gives the soul meaning. So the two of them are very important, and consciousness is really never lost. It just needs some magnetic aspect to it. Consciousness just is, but then when it mixes with the soul, it becomes the special biological system that we're all made of. And so with that said, I'm going to leave you with this, and you can start to slowly come around, and you can always pick up my book online anywhere and read through this or be guided by, and let's continue on. Perplexed about how to be the mirror, my mission becomes all about learning boundaries. And as I fall in love with shadow, wishing for the oneness, it can hurt so much to trust again. Perplexed about how to be the mirror, my mission becomes all about learning boundaries. And as I fall in love with shadow, wishing for the oneness, it can hurt so much to trust again. Perplexed about how to be the mirror, my mission becomes all about learning boundaries. And as I fall in love with shadow, wishing for the oneness, it can hurt so much to trust again.